Before we go into our interview today, I wanted to let everyone know we have a new sponsor for our Energy Question podcast, the U.S. Oil and Gas Association, or USOGA for short. First established in 1917, USOGA has been an effective and creative voice for the industry for more than a century now. USOGA is dedicated to educating the public, policymakers, and legislators at the federal, state, and local levels about the value of the domestic oil and natural gas industry. If you're in the industry and not currently a USOGA member, please consider joining the association as a way of helping it tell your story to the policymakers whose actions impact everything you do each and every day. You can start that process by contacting USOGA through its website, usoga.org. Thanks so much to USOGA for sponsoring the Energy Question podcast. And now on with our show.
Hey, welcome to the Energy Question with David Blackmon. I'm your host, David Blackmon, and my very special guest today is Congressman Andy Ogles from the great state of Tennessee, the 5th District in Tennessee. Been very active on energy issues, embroiled right now in a negotiation over the federal budget. Congressman, thank you so much for joining us today.
Oh, it's an absolute pleasure to be with you. And, anytime that I can jump on a podcast and interview with someone who's spreading the voices of common sense and freedom, it's an honor, and I appreciate your time.
Well, and I just, of course, before we started recording, you caught us on a hot mic saying nice things about you and how much my own philosophy lines up with yours. So it's just a real pleasure to have you on.
Yes,
before we get into the Q&A here, take a couple of minutes to talk about your district in Tennessee. I've got an audience that's really oil and gas centric, that's kind of Texas centric, but we got people all over the country too. But just take a minute, talk about your district in Tennessee and why you decided, what motivated you to begin with to run for Congress.
Well, so I'm born and raised in Tennessee. My family goes back to the founding of the states, but specifically my district is Southern Middle Tennessee, and Tennessee 5 has been historically a Democrat district, but because of redistricting was made competitive. So in short, I have essentially the lower third of Davidson County or Nashville. I've got half of 2 suburbs, so the Franklin, Brentwood area and Williamson County, and then the Mount Juliet area and part of Lebanon and Wilson County. And then I have 3 rural counties, so Lewis, Murray, and Marshall. So, and I'll just break it down simply, but it's roughly a third urban, a third suburban, and a third rural. Now, prior to being running for Congress, I was a county executive. Now, in Texas, I think you guys call them county judges, but it's essentially
Right.
The same role. You're the CEO of the county. It's an elected position. During COVID, I refused to comply with any of the mandates. I kept my county open, left it up to business owners as to what was in the best interest of them personally and their constituents, their customers. And I fought against the mandates. When OSHA came into my community, I sent them a letter telling them that they could pound sand, that they didn't have jurisdiction, and if they didn't like it, they could take me to court. And so I really became kind of that voice of reason during COVID of, look, you're a grown man. You don't need me to tell you to take your medication or to go see the doctor or to wear a medical device. That's not my role. Lower taxes, less government. That's kind of where I come from. But because I was so outspoken, and actually I did a statewide tour because I really fell back to the state constitution and state law. And 58-2-107 is our Emergency Powers Act. I'm a nerd, but there was nothing in statute that gave me the authority to issue a mandate. So I just recoiled from that idea. I traveled the state, challenging other county executives, or as your state calls them, county judges, and say, you don't have this authority. You took an oath to uphold the law, ergo you must refuse this authority. And so we have 95 counties in the state of Tennessee. Only roughly about 22 did any sort of mandate. The majority of them followed my lead. That really set me up unintentionally to run for Congress. And so when redistricting occurred, and I mean, if you'd asked anybody 5-6 years ago that rural Murray County would be in the Nashville district, it wouldn't have made sense. But when they drew me in, I had a very contentious primary. I won it handily. It's non-way primary, won it by 11. And then my general election is an R5, meaning I have roughly a 5-point advantage. I won it by 14. But again, it's that idea of, look, you may not agree with me on all the issues. You may not even like me, but I'm going to be a straight shooter. I'm going to fight for you. And that's what I've done since I've gotten to DC. You know, I was one of the ones that held up the speaker's race because I wanted to change the rules on how this place operates. I should be able to offer amendments to cut spending. I can do that now. I literally was just on the House floor a few moments ago, offering amendments to cut spending, to defund Secretary Blinken's salary, to defund the OPA, or the Palestinian Authority, and to recommit our loyalty to Israel as our most important partner in that region. And I can do that now because of the rules. And so here we are. We're fighting for the budget. I believe that we can pass 12 appropriations bills, and that's what we should do.
Yeah, and that's the big issue, right? I mean, it's something I've complained about personally in my writing and podcasting. The fact that we just kind of stopped doing budget bills 15 years ago. Harry Reid and Nancy Pelosi wanted to do that so that they could bloat the federal government and destroy congressional oversight as the Obama administration was coming in. And it's been very successful for the Democrats. So I'm just thrilled to see you guys fighting to go back to normal order and start passing budget bills. Because really, Congress doesn't have an oversight function that's really effective if you can't control the budgets of these departments, right?
Well, and keep in mind, all 50 states have a budget that they pass. And when you go back to what's called quote unquote regular order, where you're passing appropriations bills, there's single subject and that type of thing. The last time we did that was 1997, that we really adhered to true regular order. So that's going back roughly 26 years. So we're out of the habit of doing the job the right way. Yeah. And what I fought for in January and what I'm fighting for now is, look, we can never get spending under control. And let me back up a step. A single subject issue bill is important. And what that means is, if you're talking about the defense bill, it's only defense spending. If you're talking about the agricultural bill, it's the components listed, it's only the ag bill, right? And so now you can really drill down onto what spending is important, necessary, which of it is antiquated and needs to be cut. And what's normally happens under a CR, which is a continuing resolution, or an omnibus, which is a big spending bill, is it's like your Christmas tree, right? You put all your pretty ornaments in the front, and then all the broken, ugly ornaments, you put them in the back so nobody sees them. But what happens is when you're voting on that omnibus, that you have to take all the bad stuff with the good stuff. And so it's time that we break that habit, that we cut spending. And look, we have $33 trillion in debt. Credit card debt is an all-time high. Interest rates are skyrocketing. Defaults on payments are going up. We've got to get our economy under control. And the first step in that is cutting spending.
Yeah. So just so our audience knows, we're recording this on Thursday, September 28th. If this impasse that's currently in place goes through midnight Saturday, I guess it is, we could potentially end up with a government shutdown. Doesn't the media vastly overplay the impacts of what they call a government shutdown?
Oh, sure. I mean, most of the government spending is on autopilot anyway. So we're really only fighting over, the discretionary, quote unquote, discretionary portion. But keep in mind that, first off, you have federal workers that during a shutdown, some will be sent home. But as fate would have it, is payday is on Friday this month or this next month, and the shutdown wouldn't occur till Saturday at midnight. And so they'll actually get paid. So we have time. And this idea that it's a budget crisis, that's not true. We have work to be done. And I would argue, in January, we made a commitment to pass 12 appropriations bills by September 30th. September 30th did not move on the calendar. It's been September 30th on the calendar for a while. It doesn't move around, right? At least the way I do math. So why at the end of July were we sent home for the August work period? We could have stayed in Washington, D.C. Look, if you have a budget and you're going to fall short on that budget, you take an extra job, you work more hours, you work late nights, you work weekends. That's what we do as a family. You know, that's what we do as a father. I do as a father, right? I'm going to work hard to support my family. We have an obligation, the same type of obligation to the American people. We should have stayed here in Washington, D.C. and not been sent home. I advocated for us to stay here. And whether that took 1 week, 2 weeks, or 3 weeks, maybe it took the whole month of August, we could have gotten this done. But unfortunately, there was procrastination and there was this, well, we'll just do a CR. No. We made a promise to the American people. We should keep that promise. And this is the very reason why Congress's approval ratings are so low. We make these promises and then Congress goes back on its word. How about we keep our word for once? How about we go back to regular order? How about we have single subject spending bills so we can actually cut spending? And if you do pass something that has maybe some controversial issues or a big budget number, because it's single subject, it's easier to lay before the American people and the American people to look at that number and say, yes, I understand that that benefits our military. I understand that that helps support our security or the border or whatever. But again, we've got to get back to cutting spending, regular order. And I'm going to harp on that and harp on that. And so look, if we have a temporary few days shutdown in order to get our job done, that is fine. We're going to get through it. There's been many shutdowns in the last few years. And guess what? The sky did not fall.
So another thing that always happens in these shutdowns is the legacy news media, which of course is heavily biased, always lays the blame for everything on the Republicans. But I have to say, I watch a lot of cable news during the day, and it feels to me like you guys, particularly in the House, have been a lot more aggressive in getting your message out this time than has happened in past shutdowns. Has there been a real strategy on that for once? I've always complained that the Republicans never seem to have a communication strategy in these things, but it feels like there's been a strategy here.
Well, I don't know if it's a coordinated strategy more than just kind of the facts, the lay of the land. You know, that when you have mayors in Chicago and New York saying, you've got to shut the border, we can't afford this, we're going broke, we've got to do something about spending, interest rates are too high. When you have the mayor of Dallas in your home state saying, you know what, I'm no longer a Democrat, I'm going to be a Republican, and quite frankly, the country needs Republicans. I think that sends a clear message shot across the bow that the current path we're on is a destructive path. And so it's kind of easy to sometimes to state the obvious, but I do think, and there is some partial blame to be laid that Congress did not get these bills done on time. Now we can fix that, and then we need to work hard to fix that. So we need to work late. We need to get up early the next morning. We need to stay weekends. We need to get up early, and we need to stay late. I mean, wash, rinse, repeat, but in a good way of we put in the hours, we put in the work, we can get this done. We can keep America moving forward. But I would argue that this also sends a positive message to our allies overseas, that when Congress commits itself to a mission, when we make a commitment, we're going to keep it. The old way of doing business is gone. We're going to do it the right way, the way our founding fathers intended.
Well, this is supposed to be an energy-focused podcast, so we'll talk about energy next. Go ahead.
I would say that, but it all ties together because you're talking about spending, you're talking about the economy. The future and the way to correct the economy is to grow the economy. So again, and you know, when you have $33 trillion worth of debt, we can't cut our way out of this mess that's been made. You do that by growing the economy. And the number one way to grow the economy is to be energy independent again, to acknowledge the fact that the future of energy in this country is coal, it is gas, and perhaps even nuclear. But this idea that wind and solar is somehow going to supplant our traditional means of energy is nonsense. It's agenda driven. And by the way, that electricity that's running through your outlet that you're plugging your car into, that's probably produced by either coal or natural gas. And so the irony there, right, is that this clean energy is produced by fossil fuels or coal. And so I'm a big proponent of our oil and gas industry. We need to ramp that up. And it becomes a national security issue, right? Is that we are dependent on the folks that hate us, quite frankly. And the closer we move to quote unquote green energy, this electrification, the more dependent we are on China. And because they dominate the world's rare earth minerals, they have roughly 90% market share. And when it comes to processing those rare earth minerals, it's closer to 95, 96%. So you're telling me the country that is the existential threat to the United States of America, the CCP, China, who's also advancing aggressively towards Taiwan. We want to be dependent on them for rare earth minerals as we cripple ourselves with this green energy push. No, N-O-H-E double, hockey stick, no, oil and gas, burn baby burn, drill baby drill is my motto. I said on the campaign trail, someone asked me an energy related question. It's like, look, you find oil in my backyard, put a pump up and let's get this stuff going.
Yeah,
one, I'll
boy.
make money, and two, it pushes us towards energy independence.
Yeah. Well, you've been and of course it's near dear and dear to my heart is you've been an outspoken critic of ESG and you know, as it is impacting investment and really everything in the corporate world right now. Talk about why you see that as such a destructive thing for our economy.
Well, you know, we just had you know, Gensler in our committee with the SEC.
Yeah.
And I pushed him on that type of questioning of, so environment, social governance, ESG. It's very much agenda driven, again, as we've said, as we know this administration is. But the environment, is really constructed to attack and destroy our energy and oil and gas infrastructure here in the United States of America, which again makes us more dependent on our enemies. And then when you look at the social and the governance, that's all about the woke stuff. You know, are you hiring enough of this person, or do you have these policies that men to wear dresses? Look, if you want to wear a dress, that's your business. You're still a dude in a dress. I said it, it's out there. But look, how about we get back to capitalism? How about we get back to the free market? And if you have a soda shop or you have a mutual fund and you want to have policies that are driven by your personal political opinion, that should be your choice, but it shouldn't be mandated by the government. And that's where I draw the line. The government should not be interfering in how you operate your business, nor should we be penalizing if you don't comply.
Yeah, that SEC regulation that have been ginning up for a year now. I don't know if they're ever going to really try to finalize a rule, but that thing would be incredibly destructive if it goes into effect. The other thing, they're doing a lot of things that are idiotic in the Biden administration, but one of the other things has been going after gas appliances, for crying out loud. Such a stupid thing to be focusing on. One thing you did recently is introduce a bill called the Hot Showers Act, which is a great piece of legislation. Yeah, I love that. So talk about what that bill would do.
Well, you know, and going back to the idea of a rule, so you have a lot of agencies, whether it's the SEC or the EPA, they'll create these rules that directly impact industry. And so what happens is, by making a new rule or interpreting a new rule or an old rule, kind of reinterpreting a rule, they're legislating. And that's not their job. That's Congress's job. That's our job. And so it's important that we push back against that. Now, to your point of the Hot Showers Act, you know, you've got the Biden administration. He's going after water heaters and gas stoves, really anything that is using natural gas. And excuse me, I live out in the country and we have a gas stove. We have a gas water heater, because where I live out in the country, back in the valley, if we have an ice storm, we could be without power for a week.
Yeah.
And so we need the ability to cook, to have hot showers. Now we may, you know, still have to improvise with we have a wood burning stove and those types of things. But, you know, by taking those off the market, what you're doing is you're removing some of the more affordable appliances, whether it's water heaters or gas stoves, off the market, and you're hurting the people that this administration purports to want to help, which is the lower income, those who want to buy their first home. And so if you put this high tech, quote unquote, high efficiency green gas stove or a water heater in a home, all you're doing is driving up the cost at a time when interest rates have already priced so many people out of the market. So, you know, you hate to be a conspiracy theorist, but it's only a conspiracy until it happens. And here lately, a lot of those conspiracies have come true. But it would seem that the Biden administration is literally trying to destruct and destroy our economy and our ability to be independent and just, you know, I hate to say this, but rely on America. You know, I'm not one of these America alone folks. I am an America first. And so we need to be energy independent. We need to bring more manufacturing home. Regardless of what side of the coin you're on or during COVID, we saw that supply chains were impacted because of our enemies. We saw the prices of fuel fluctuating, aggressively. And so, you know, it's important that we rebuild for whether it's from pumping to production to refining capabilities in the oil and gas sector. And I want to say this and reiterate this, even if you kind of maybe you're leaning green a little bit, that this is a national security issue. You know, when you see Russia and their aggression in Ukraine, there's some people that would theorize that if they win, if they have victory in Ukraine, they're going to move on other states in Eastern Europe. We see that China is becoming more aggressive there in Taiwan, whether it's invading their airspace or by sea. Now, look, you know, an invasion of Taiwan is logistically difficult, but if anyone could pull it off, it would be China. And so we've got to be thinking in long-term terms in the way that CCP, you know, we kind of have this drive-through society where we're thinking about tomorrow or maybe just through the next hour. But the CCP, China, they think in terms of dynasties. And so they're looking at the long-range trajectory of our country. They're looking at our debt. They're looking at our access to rare earth minerals. They're looking at our energy production. It also should be noted that the CCP is actively looking for oil and gas and rare earth minerals right here in our backyard, Central and South America. They've made huge strides with their road and Belt and Road initiative in Africa. And so they're on the move. And if we don't wake up, if we don't get our head out of the sand, if we, you know, always, you know, probably disrespectfully say that, you know, the Biden, you know, President Biden gets lost in the Rose Garden, we've got to have somebody at the helm of this ship that knows the direction that we're going. They can see the collisions ahead. Always liken the U.S. economy to the Titanic. It's a big ship. It turns slowly. We know that a collision is coming, but we have time to correct course. Right now, the person at the helm of that ship does not know what he's doing, and he's actively bearing down on a collision course.
Yeah, you know, it often seems to me, and I told somebody last week, I was doing a radio interview myself, and I said, look, if you were going to intentionally develop a plan that would, at the end of the day, render the United States completely dependent on China, its biggest existential threat on Earth, completely relied on China for our energy and national security, you would put in place the plan the Biden administration is pursuing on energy. Yeah, I mean, it's just incredible to me that people can't see it, but you know, most people don't think about this stuff like I do either. Obsess over it every day, which is what I do.
But you see it playing out. You know, the price of oil. I don't know where it is today, but it's been bouncing around $100. It's projected to possibly hit 150. You know, that has a direct impact on everything. Our economy runs on gas and diesel. So everything in your office, in the grocery store, somehow was touched by gas and or diesel. And so when you have that underlying cost going up, your production is going up, the cost to move, to transport goes up, that bread, that milk, that picture behind you, your eyeglasses, everything costs more. And so we have to get back to energy independence. It's an economic issue, but it's a national security issue.
You know, and I want to also step back too and relate what we were just talking about a minute ago with these regulations by the SEC and on the stoves and everything, the appliances. This is another reason why it's so important for Congress to go back to regular order and start passing budget bills. Because if you had single subject budget bills, you could start withholding funds in the House for the SEC to move that regulation ahead. You can just tell them to stop spending money on it, right?
Yeah, absolutely. And that's really, I mean, that is the power. I mean, it's a cliche, the power of the purse. Unfortunately, Congress hasn't really executed the power of the purse, unless you're talking in terms of overspending and overextending the country's credit card, right? But the power of the purse, what that means is if you have an agency that goes rogue, you can cut their spending. If you have an individual, a secretary that isn't doing their job, or maybe is incompetent in their job, you can use the Holman rule and defund that particular that office. And that's what I did with one of my amendments. I defunded Anthony Blinken's salary. Legally, you can only take it down to $1. But that being said, we're sending a message that you have failed America in your role, and that we're going to hold you, we in Congress are going to hold you accountable, and that we have to get back to this idea of the power of the purse, where we're going to hold agencies and various departments accountable for their actions and their outcomes, but also individuals as well. And if you're not doing your job, and if you're more beholden to an agenda than your country, you're going to get defunded, and hopefully you'll resign because of it, because you're not really truly representing Americans. And what's scary is, our founding fathers warned us about kind of the administrative state, and we now see it come to fruition. During COVID, you had all these departments, all these agencies really flexed their muscles, right? And they went above and beyond really what they statutorily were allowed to do. But since COVID has since been declared over, they've not given that authority back. And quite frankly, most of them have been emboldened. And I would argue too, and I know this is really about energy, is what you see unfolding in this country is a two-tiered justice system. Look, you can like Trump, you can dislike Trump, but the fact that woke district attorneys can distort RICO laws to somehow target a former president, that should scare you. It should truly scare you, because if they can go after a former president, they can go after you, they can go after your preacher, they can go after me, because they simply don't agree with you. And that should be frightening, or it should frighten you. And so I think that's kind of that canary in the coal mine, if you will, that we have run amok. We're astray of what our founding fathers intended. And when you look at this kind of disagreement by persecution with our judicial system, let's say against Trump or anyone else, the J6ers, look, if you came into the Capitol, you trespassed. But this idea of insurrection, come on, that's treasonous. There's a big difference, right? When you have moms and grandmothers arrested because they're peacefully praying in front of an abortion clinic, they're being arrested because now that woke district attorney disagrees with them. That type of persecution did not work in Rome. It signaled the end of the empire. It did not work in Britain. It signaled the end of their empire. And so the fact that we're now incarcerating or people that this current regime disagrees with are being incarcerated, that is a problem. I'm vocal about it. I'm going to fight against it. We're going to try to defund these folks and hold them accountable. But look, we're in an ideological, and I would argue a spiritual war. The soul of our nation is at stake. And getting back, kind of bringing it home, part of the thing that we have to do moving forward is we have to be energy independent. We have to push back against the EPA. I mean, when was the last time a refinery was built in this country? You can't do it because of the EPA, right? They found a huge lithium deposit in this country. That's great and all, but what are the odds the EPA would actually allow us to mine it? They'll sue the companies that try to do it into oblivion and keeping us dependent on China. So energy independence is kind of forefront at fixing this economy.
Yeah. Hey, before we wrap this up, I want to give you the opportunity to tell folks how they can get in touch with you, where they can go to support your efforts in Congress.
We know because I'm outspoken, I'm under constant attack. I'll most likely have both a primary and a general election. So you can go to andyogles.com. You can go to Twitter or X, whatever you call it. I say if it's Twitter and it's X, I call it Twix, but whatever. Go to Twitter, go to Rep Ogles or Andy Ogles. Same thing with Facebook, facebook.com/Andy Ogles. I'm easy to find, and look forward to connecting.
Congressman Andy Ogles, I so appreciate your time today. Thank you for doing the show. Come back anytime. You have an open invitation. I love everything you're doing and really appreciate it.
Well, thank you so much, and God bless.
God bless you too. And thanks to our sponsors, the U.S. Oil and Gas Association, Stu Turley and the Sandstone Group for hosting our podcast, and our extraordinary producer, Eric Carell. I'm David Blackmon, and that's all for now.